Good evening and welcome to the Not So Perfect Bigfoot Show. I'm your host tonight. I have Gwen Purcell and her legendary husband. As I say for my husband, I'm going to say for your husband, the legendary Michael Purcell. And we have Dan Del Dorado. We're going to let Gwen kick it off tonight. Today is or tonight's Christmas night, and I'm gonna let
Yep.
Gwen and Michael tell you why they're here and why they wanted to be here tonight, and I'm gonna let them just run the show. I'm just here for the ride.
Oh, well, I want to introduce my husband, Michael. He doesn't get to be on a show with me very often. He's the silent partner in Got Knockers. And,
Sometimes not so silent.
well, yeah.
He gets a lot of looks too, don't he?
Oh my gosh. When we're at festivals and he's the only one at the table, and I'm like walking by or I'm coming back from somewhere, I hear him going, "It's my wife's brand," because he's afraid people think he's some creepo selling God Knockers t-shirts.
He doesn't look that scary though. So.
He's like, "It's my wife's brand. It's woman owned. She came up with it herself." Like he goes through this whole thing, like to just convince people that he's not, a weirdo.
A weird guy just selling t-shirts and knockers.
But we all wanted to get on here tonight because I know there's a lot of people that don't have families or friends to spend the holidays with, and we all weren't doing anything tonight. We decided to, hop on here and keep anybody company that wants to hop on with us and talk about whatever comes up.
Well, I think I only have like 23 subscribers, so I don't think it's going to be a busy night.
Well, let's get you to 50.
It's okay. I'm just if someone's just going through the channels and they need some company tonight, I totally get it. And you went on some calls this week, which reminds you the importance of not forgetting your neighbor.
Absolutely.
And I want to, without going into details, I just want to say, thank you so much for what you do.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, Michael, thank you for putting up with her. I know that's a handful.
A lot of alcohol. No, I'm kidding. I very rarely drink. Sometimes I wonder why I don't.
We were not tonight, and I caught him staring at me, and I'm like, "What are you thinking?" He's like, "How lucky I am." And I turned around and I looked behind me and I said, "Who are you talking about?" Surely you don't mean how lucky you are to be stuck with me for the rest of your life.
You guys have got some good chemistry. You really do.
They got depressing real quick.
I just don't understand, Michael. Okay, Michael. How can you be in the car and not see a Bigfoot go across the cornfield?
Right?
How does that happen?
Clueless. I know she says, "Oh, I won't be able to see a naked lady." Trust me.
I said a naked lady.
I just want to see a naked Bigfoot.
Like what? Where?
Oh yeah. I don't know. I guess I was just too busy on just looking left and right and kind of just not paying attention. Then I'm like, all right, pull out. And
You're doing what a good driver should do.
Yeah, usually.
Oh my God.
I mean, if you ask her, a good driver and me don't go together. I mean,
no.
I have ninja-like skills when I drive.
I get in the floorboard with my husband. If his friend says 50, we're talking about his truck, I'm in the floorboard. I'm like, I don't want to see it. So I get it. So when she come home, when she told you about it, were you shocked, or you're like, I didn't see that? Or woman, are you crazy?
Well, I knew, because she always says, "You're going to think," I'm like, "You could stop that right now." I already know she's crazy, so there's no thinking. I kind of thought it was I forget where we were going, just maybe.
I don't even remember where we were going either.
And she was really quiet, and you could see sometimes, her and that mouth don't shut up. She was quiet, and we were coming back home, and I'm like, "So what's going on with you? You didn't, and then she's like, "I think I saw something," and I'm like, "What?" And I'm born and raised in Shamokin. It's like back in the day, it was for coal. So you had coal miners, you had bars and churches on every corner. And she's like, I think I saw a Bigfoot. And I'm like, get out, not by our house. And I'm like, and then she started doing research and she's like, well, there was some in Shamokin, there was some in Sunbury. I'm like, they're probably very tall, dirty coal miners just walking the street. And I was joking. But I know Gwen, I mean, are dating and stuff like that. She's not gonna bullshit anybody. She tells you like it is, whether you like it or not. I mean, if you ask her a question, you better prepare to either like it or love it. But regardless, if you or like it, love it, or hate it, you're gonna deal with it. So I knew she didn't lie, and I'm like, okay. I'm like, are you sure? She's like, I think. She's like, this thing just crossed the field. I mean, we weren't at that stop sign long, because it's only two ways, left, right. If you went straight, you'd go into the upper part of that cornfield. She saw the Bigfoot in, and I'm like, okay. So she started doing research and everything, and then she started looking around, doing things, and then somehow she saw that Paul Bogdan and another Paul were doing a BFR expedition that year in September for her birth. It was over her birthday weekend, and I'm like,
yeah,
I want to go. I'm like, okay.
That was crazy.
We have a camper, so I can work from home. So I took my laptop. I worked from the camper. We had two adult dogs, and we just got these 2 bloodhounds. And I'm like, this is going to be interesting. Me with 4 dogs, and she did her thing, and. Yeah, like she says, this is how Knockers got started. She admired some guy's knockers. I mean,
That didn't quite happen like that.
I think it was. I think Gwen knows a good set of knockers.
There's nothing wrong with a little friendly competition there, Mike.
That's right. So and then it was like that was 21, and then last year started the. She waited till like January, late December, early January to get the trademark going, and we start finding like conferences to go to. We started with Dan Benoit's, the ECBRO one, and then we went to Tennessee and down to South Carolina. We went to Tennessee twice.
Yep.
North Carolina.
North Carolina this year, yes, which was nice.
Best day of my life.
And
so, that's what Michael says too.
So I was like, oh, so now we have Bigfoot season, where we're going through everything. It's
funny because I tell my boss that too when I give him my schedule for this. Like every month he comes to me and he says, so what days do you need off for January? And I go, and I remind him that pretty soon it's going to be Bigfoot season.
Yeah. That's good. You get a tag for it. So I have a question.
It's Bigfoot season.
You guys really hit the ground running, and you have got a radio show coming out now. You said
that's going to launch in January. Yep.
So let's get the backstory behind these 2 incredible people that he just embraced it. He's like, babe, I didn't see it, but I got you.
You did.
Yeah, well, Michael, I got thumbs up. On the husband meter, you're way down there. You're in the red. You're good, baby. You're good.
Thank you. So I was just what, like she says, and her thought process and mine is the same. If, growing up, I heard of Bigfoots, I've heard of ghosts, all that good stuff. But I didn't give it much thought, especially in our area. We're, Central PA, we're an hour plus from Harrisburg. To go to Pittsburgh and to Allegheny, we're about 3.5, 4 hours. We're, more of a open mass of unexplored land. So I was like, if they're out there, they're out there. If they're not, who are we to say they are? So, I could have cared less, but it's been fun. And then it really hit me, like after she saw, then we had and there's still stuff going on at the house that we just can't explain. Like a month ago, she put up this penguin that we bought, and it's the same tree. And it's told the story. So when I bought the house 15 years ago, almost 16 years ago. And I'm only the second owner. The house was built in like 99. I bought it in 08. So I started doing landscaping, and I put a tree on each end of the house. Well, the one on the right side as you're coming into the driveway, grows on an angle like, how is this? Like this, like on an angle.
You
It's
get
like
some
get away
pretty
from the
strong
house.
winds, so it blew.
It's a healthy tree.
Yeah,
It's probably be about that thick, but it's healthy. Until one day, if we get like 30 inches of snow, it might end up in the yard. But we had, let's see, that was 21. I think it was 21 when we had she heard the whistle. We heard something that sounded like metal coming off the house. And then it was April of 21, and we were coming home. We had a small dusting, and I let the dogs out, and she let the dogs out. They came running on that side of the house, so I just cut from the driveway over and noticed a branch about a couple inches thick just snapped off and parallel with the house. Now, what I thought was interesting in the daytime, first of all, I'm like, how did that break off? Because it's underneath the tree. We didn't get a lot of snow. There's just no explanation for a break. And then it's like, if it broke, why didn't it just fall and go parallel with the tree? Why is it parallel with the house?
And it was actually away from the tree.
Yeah, and it was away from the tree.
It would have never ended like it did. So I don't.
It was a crazy placement.
Yeah.
That was like, so.
Right.
Yeah, and then that was April, and then like in the daytime, it was almost 8 feet tall in the air, and it was just snapped off. And then she wanted to get in the bees, and she got the hive, and it was raining on and off, not terribly heavy, but enough to just be consistent. And she was dealing with the bees on our sand mound side on the other side of our driveway, and I just start wandering around, and like all of a sudden I saw other trees. Like I just couldn't explain. Like there was a tree that was blown over and locked, like it was locked in. It was maybe this then another tree branch pushed back in. There was another one woven in behind it, and they were only thin. And then there was trees propped up that didn't make sense. And then it started like dawning on me, like, holy crap. Like I've watched the shows with her, and I was like, this is kind of weird. Yeah, I'm like, what's going on? Like, this is crazy, And then we just had it out. Like I said, about a month ago on that same tree, she was putting up a blow-up penguin, and there's a branch about that thick.
It's an outside branch.
It's an outside branch that snapped off and laid back in the tree.
It would just fall on the ground, but this was actually shoved back into the tree.
And it's sticking out.
The broken end was sticking
out. Like the tree, and then the branch sticks out about a foot or two facing away from the house, and
what does that?
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, when you know. Do you think it's just them being tricksters? I mean, just inquisitive.
We would love to know. I always said this: if somebody is messing with us, please come forward, because you're doing a great job. I mean, our ground is shell and hard, so to get a good footprint is not going to happen. I mean, even with a soaking rain, maybe with the grass, it's just too rocky. But just the fact that whoever's doing this is, doing a good job. On that same tree, we had a landscaper come and do like all boulder work for us, because we had our patio extended. We couldn't figure out what we were going to use as a retaining wall, because it went from a foot to 4 feet and back down to a foot. And I'm like, what can we do to make it look nice? So I found a guy, and then this was September of 21. And he was like, he's like, I'll do all this. And he finally came February that was 22. He came this year in February. But when we were talking to him back in September, I look over his shoulder, and there was a branch about yay big, broke off and woven in between. And I stopped him. I called her over, and he's like, oh, I could tell you what did that. And he's like, you see that? A beetle got in there, and it started eating out the branch and killing it. I'm like, great. I'm like, that killed the branch, but why is the branch still woven in the tree? Did that beetle just kind of just like pick it up and then
get bored too, So I want you guys, my fabulous husband jumped on, Johnny, when you guys start talking about bees, I seen his ears go up, because Johnny, I call him the smoke master. You guys met him with me at back in April.
Yep.
Yep. So Johnny, you want to jump in?
What's happening? How y'all guys doing?
Good. How you doing? Merry Christmas.
You too, man. I'm sitting here with the old crazy
cowboy,
famous cowboy.
You wore her out.
Yeah, she's getting old now. We've been to the woods a lot over the years.
Mm.
They have bloodhounds.
He loves to go. And in fact, he'll make you feel guilty when you're leaving and you're not carrying him. And he really especially gets her. I feel so bad. But I got a few hives of bees too. I got 48 right now.
48.
Wow.
48.
Jeez, I have 2. That makes me.
We look after the Bigfoot people now. You get a good discount.
We I had about 90, but we sold right many coming into the winter, and so we're set up to make another 90.
Oh my
Wow.
God.
We can keep them alive. I've been feeding bees for 3 days, so we've been pumping food hard.
Oh wow.
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 Yeah.
So how many hives you want to get?
This will be the second winter that I'm trying to overwinter bees. I had 2 hives last year. I caught a swarm, and then I had bought a hive, and the swarm that I caught they were nasty. I should have never should have never taken them. They were so mean. It was incredible how mean these bees were. Like, I couldn't even put on my suit to go out there. They were like, oh, here she comes. They were just attack. So that hive actually died.
Thank God.
Yeah, thank God. I actually wasn't upset about it. I was like, oh, thank you, Jesus. The other hive was doing great all winter long. Like, I'd go out and I'd check, just to see if they were flying in and out or anything. And they were doing great. And then spring came and they were gone. And I was like, what the hell happened? So then I didn't have any. So then in the big tall hive that the aggressive bees, I don't know if they died or what happened, but a swarm moved in all on their own.
Yep.
So I got free bees, and then a girlfriend of mine had one of her beehives swarm, and I went and took those bees. So they're both doing well so far.
Yeah, how cold does it get up there?
It's been really nice, actually. I think
Yeah.
the coldest it's gotten has
In
been
the
like
30s.
Yeah, in the
30s.
30s.
Well, that's not bad.
No, it's not been bad. So
Can I change the channel for a minute before I
sure.
forget my question? Michael, where
Yeah.
did you think the golf balls come from?
Yeah. I can't. That is interesting because I can't explain. I know she says the golf course is a couple miles
What
down
is
the road. But
2.4 exactly?
but I do know my neighbor in front of us to the right. So when you come into our house, we have a house that we share a driveway with, and then next to us on the way out on the right is a house. And every now and then I would find him hitting golf balls on my sand mound side, which sometimes he doesn't retrieve them, and then it's a pain in the ass when I'm mowing my grass and I see a golf ball. But now, for him to drive that golf ball from where he lives to like in that yard, I mean, you're probably talking 500 yards or more. And if this guy who's older than me, I think, is driving golf balls 1,000, almost 1,500 feet, then he needs to be way on the senior PGA because he could be kicking. So I don't think they're. If anything, I would say they're ones that are probably left into the woods, and if they're gathered, I mean, I'm sure he was hitting golf balls before I moved in. Now I haven't seen him in a couple of years hit some golf balls, but I've seen him because I would hear something come through the trees, and I was like, "Yep, there's Vince hitting golf balls." And so I don't know if they were down over our property and they were gathered, but when she said this year with her and Jessica they went down in that cornfield and they saw like a couple like nested like
There's 5 of them.
I thought that was
Small area.
yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I would love to see one. I would, maybe sit around the fire. I mean, I don't know.
When she told me that, I said, "Isn't it funny how things just fall into place once you see it, everything just makes sense and it just kind of falls into place." And
Yeah.
We were finding golf balls before I had the first sighting of Bigfoot. And I'm walking around the yard going, where the hell are these golf balls coming from? And he's like, oh, the neighbor hits them. And I'm like, no, I have not seen the neighbor hit any golf balls whatsoever. Like, he hasn't done it as long as I've been here. He's not hit golf balls. I'm like, I can't. Every time we go out in the yard, there's golf balls somewhere. And
Did
I'm
you
like,
film them around your dead chicken?
yeah, this past summer, I found them. There was 5 golf balls in the same area as the carcass of one of my dead chickens.
Yeah.
Like, there was nothing but feathers and stuff there. Everything else was gone. I was like,
Victoria, is Dan on?
His phone's trying to kick in.
Yeah, I see it keep turning there, but
Yeah, his phone keeps trying to kick in. Yeah. So now me and Johnny was talking today about Johnny. Tell him about the bandana, because it's kind of the same as finding golf balls and other things on your property.
she's going to be doing some shorts. We've been going to a place that is really producing a whole lot of stuff from orbs that we're getting videos of, and so me and a fellow who goes with us named Lynn, we've been going to this place. It's the same place as, I guess, the second. When it's your second time, Victoria, when you actually caught the glimpse of something moving?
Oh, I'm sorry, my mascara's running because they were making me laugh. There's shame on them. Yeah. We split up, and you went by the water, and I went up the valley, or between the two peaks, and I caught off of my peripheral. It was like a large black object, but it was just like, it was just so fluid and fast. And I'm like, it didn't even make any sounds, but
Wow.
you don't know what it is. But with everything else that's been happening, so I'm like, I wonder.
So we've been going to this place, and what we've been doing is most of the times we're there, we'll do a really short, sometimes a 5-minute video sitting by the fire, sometimes a 15-minute video, and we'll actually talk about what's going on. So she's going to start throwing some shorts on here. But what she's talking about with the bandana was we went a few times, and Terry Wendell went with us, and we had 2 recorders going, and we had some kind of infrasound interference that was actually coming on the recorder. So when Terry checked the other recorder, both recorders had the interference at the same place. But what it sounded like, if you go to YouTube and look up dolphins infrasound, that's what it sounded like.
oh, wow.
So we keep going, and so we would leave the truck and we would take a hike up on the ridge, but we would put a recorder in the back of the truck while we were gone. So when we get back and we play the recorder back, it sounds like something's moving stuff around in the back of my truck. So, but what was really weird was we could hear water running. You couldn't hear it with your ears, but we could hear water running like it was, everything was alive, like it was almost, it was being recorded from a different place. It was crazy. So the next time we went back, which was like the following week, we did the exact same thing, put the recorder in, and we went up to the ridge and did a walk around the ridge. We were gone about 30 minutes. When we came back, I'll say this before we left. Before we left, Lynn wanted to go ahead and get the fire ready. So he went around and gathered some sticks and stuff around the edge of where we had been putting the fire. And he's actually set it up. And we unloaded the chairs and set them down, and we went up the ridge, and we came back. There is a large blue handkerchief that is laid across the trees right there next to the campsite. And we can hear this thing on the recorder, whatever it is, still moving stuff around the back of my truck.
Wow.
So one of the shorts that she's going to put on there, we left it where it was at. We actually sat in the chairs, and we set the camera up where you could look between the chairs where we're at and see where it was actually where we found it. Well, that night, this was at the edge of dark, and we had been there a couple weeks before when me and Terry and Victoria was there. And I am not a spooky type of guy. If I tell you there's a weird feeling, there's a weird feeling. So I'm not, a lot of times and a lot of activity that I've had over the years, me and this dog has been by herself.
Right.
in a lot of different places. I've got a photo that I got about 5 years ago on a Bushnell infrared camera. He was with me the night I got that, and that was got in Uwharrie. But so I left Victoria and Terry sitting at the fire, and I walked back down the washout and was going to grab a couple of limbs. And when I bent over to pick up a limb, it felt like something was on my back. I mean, it was so close. It was just weird. So I stood up and I grabbed the limb and I looked around with my light. I didn't see nothing. So I started walking back because I was off the washout. So I was all in the edge of the woods. So when I got back to the edge of the washout, I started going back to where they were at, and it felt like something was breathing on my neck. So I spun around.
Me.
Huh?
I said, was it me?
So I'm not that kind of guy. I walk off all the time and set my recorder up and leave them at the fire, and I go get it. So I stepped up the pace, got back to where they were at, and I said, guys, I'm telling you, there's something. You know me, I don't never say a whole lot of anything, but yeah, I just got the weirdest feeling I've had in a long, long time. So we walked back to where I had just come from, and we walked in with the FLIR, and we picked up an object it looked like a round circle, but it was down in what Victoria's nicknamed the pass, but it was down in the bottom. So Victoria started taking a couple steps towards it, and it disappears. So go forward, when we got the handkerchief, me and Lynn decided we were going to walk that same path. I had a red light on, he had a green light on our headlamp. So we got almost to the same area where I had the weird feeling, and it was like stepping on a landmine. Something screamed at us so hard, fast, and loud that it rattled our chest. You could feel it through your chest. And there's a little ridge that drops off there. Same area, whereas we've actually got some FLIR pictures of something peeping around behind a tree that Victoria found when she was scanning with the FLIR.
Had shoulders.
Yeah, we're having a lot of activity there. It's weird. We're seeing two orbs at the time floating around and getting videos of them on FLIR. So not sure exactly what we got going on there, but
that would go back to like the golf balls. You obviously, if the Bigfoot on your property, Gwen and Michael, they took the golf balls from somewhere, someone, and then you could go Pennsylvania to North Carolina. You know that bandana was not at that campsite. It wasn't. It was within probably 4 feet from where they, started the campfire at. Had it been a person walking up the ridge, you got dry leaves all over the ground.
Right.
They're going to make nothing. And sound carries in the valley.
Yep.
I mean, so that's a prime example of something being taken from somewhere and then end up, just out of the blue at someone's campsite. And you get that all over, all over the world. So at some point, you have all of these common denominators from different people. And we never told you that story. I mean,
no.
Incredible.
That's very interesting.
One of Philip he's a guy out of Georgia that's had some experiences. He actually came up to the festival we had up this year in Cumnock and spoke. But he was telling me, after I was telling him about the bandana, that there was some reading and some people that had some theories that they're drawn to blue. So I'd never heard that. But anyway, this was not a totally clean handkerchief, but it was not messed up, and there's nobody around there. There's nothing. We've never seen anybody in there. It's not close to campsites. There's no campsites that's close by. It's an area that we just found this past spring, trying to get away from the crowds. because you just a lot of people like to be where the crowds is at. I don't like to be where the crowds is at because most of the activity I ever got, it's somewhere away from the crowds. Not saying they don't slip up there in the middle of the night, just like they would at some of the campgrounds.
Right.
But it's just not as personable. Because what we found was the more you go, the more they get familiar, just like you around your house. The more you go, the more familiar they get with you. They know your vehicle. They know what it sounds like. They know what your voice sounds like. And we're definitely not there to hurt them. And now we're not going to get hurt. I'll add that. But we're not there to hurt them. We'd rather sit down and chat with them if they'd let us. But
Right.
Yeah, that's how we are. We don't want to hurt them. We don't want to get hurt. I mean, when she had some folks over and Carrie,
that
that was an interesting night. They came home with the dogs in the house.
I had Sean Forker and Matt Arner over, to kind of just see that I'm not crazy, because I've been telling him these stories. We became friends, and I was like, come on over. I'll take you out here. We'll sit in the woods. And they came and we were standing around the fire and we were all talking, and out of nowhere, this screaming came. I've never heard it before and I've not heard it since. It was just that night. And initially I was thinking Fisher cat, that maybe it was a Fisher cat screaming. This thing sounded like a woman was being murdered. Like it was just screaming. And me and another guy took off for the woods. And as soon as I hit the wood line, the screaming stopped. And I've never heard it again. Never. So
you think you were too close? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. I think he was, I don't think he liked having the large group of people is what I ultimately, because I took Sean and his son and Steve, Carrie's husband, out into the woods. We sat in different spots. We took some glow sticks out there, and it was pitch dark. I mean, it was midnight and flashlights are off and we're out there. I found it kind of funny because I'm sitting out there, I'm sitting on this log, and Sean and his son are a good distance away from me. And within an hour, Sean and his son were sitting right next to me on the on the log. And I was like, hey guys, are you all right? So, we get out of the woods, and Sean's like, if our woods are pretty treacherous, like there's a lot of groundhog holes, there's a lot of rocks, there's a creek there.
Trees down.
Like, yeah, there's trees down everywhere. He's like, if somebody's messing with you, they're doing a good job, because if you weren't here to lead me through the woods, he goes, I'd hurt myself. Like, because I wouldn't know where all of this stuff is that I'd be tripping over and falling on and breaking my leg. And when they left, the next morning we had a tree break. It was a sumac tree. Well, ain't nobody going to mess with that sumac tree. You're going to get poisoned.
Yeah, I noticed that. That was the craziest thing.
It was broken off at like 5 foot. The top of the tree is laying on the ground. It's still very green. And I was like, I don't think they were happy that I took people into the woods. So I don't take people not into these woods here at the house. I don't take people into the woods anymore. And we haven't had any issues since then. But I don't think he appreciated, or they, I should say, appreciated me taking people into their backyard. I mean, I don't think they liked it.
And that sumac tree was an interesting, because they had gone, her and I were going to go somewhere, and not that I live out privately, but I'm at the end of the patio, decided to take a whiz, and down by the fire pit where I burn the trash, and I'm looking. So, and this was just after we had the patio extended. The guy's like, where do you want me to put all this stuff? And I said, between the tree and my trash pit. I said, stay away from the bees. He was 2 feet from behind the bees, and he ended it. And right at the end was a sumac tree. And I know that tree was the only thing in this area, and it was standing straight up. And just like I said, I was down there, and she's like yelling my name. I'm like, you got to come down here. She's like, and I said, were you guys over here yesterday? She's like, no. And I knew they weren't. I knew they were down behind the chickens. And I said, take a look at the sumac tree. I said, it is snapped off and bent over. And I said, that wasn't like that. Like yesterday before.
The night before, that was standing upright.
Yeah.
But the next morning it was torn, it was broken off. And I was
and it's not like the rock was piled up that high. It was only piled up like maybe a foot or so off the ground because he spread it out. And it was almost like here's the tree, and the rock just ended at like before that tree. Rather than breaking, because it should have snapped off at the bottom if he was still putting rock and spreading it out.
Wow, that's
You know,
incredible.
I think sometimes that they are able to, like, you could carry some people with you and they wouldn't have a problem, but you can carry other people with you and they know the atmosphere.
Yeah.
They understand
Yeah.
that they just don't like the way the atmosphere is around them. I mean, that's what I've carried people with us and we don't get nothing. I've carried 3 or 4 with us and we get all kinds of stuff. So
Yeah.
I think they can tell. Dan, hey buddy.
Hey,
Dan.
man,
Can
I'm back here and finally.
Hey, Dan. I just want to take a minute. Dan, Gwen, and Michael, Pennsylvania.
Hi.
Gwen Purcell, Michael Purcell, Pennsylvania. I'd really like for you guys to connect off air and just, it's great connection to have. But Dan, if you will today, can you share with Gwen and Michael about the herb you found on the stone when you were having your skin drafts done?
Sure, absolutely.
They get things on their property, get the golf balls, and
Right.
they've had they've seen one, but it might give all of us some insight about how I think they'll take a lot like I did, because I never stopped to realize, sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just rambling. Go.
Sure. But I'll just jump in and give a little review. I was in the BFRO for 4 years. I got out because of politics, and also I was gaining weight like crazy because I was having so much fun. I was doing stuff 24/7, and my typing went from 35 words a minute to 105, and I was doing witnesses as hard and as fast as I could go nationwide. I'm a herpetologist, a reptile and amphibian specialist. Also worked as a biologist, and I'm a wildlife photographer, so I'm interested in all this stuff. Anything that sucks air, I want a picture of. So, and I do have an interesting sense of humor also. So I'm appreciating every word y'all are saying. And I worked for the National Wildlife Federation in environmental education in Hendersonville, North Carolina, back in the late 70s, by the way. So I'm an old dude, but I'm still acting like I'm 18, so I apologize for that. Next thing I'm going to say is we got a property here in southwestern Wisconsin. I started monitoring. It started out as a rattlesnake problem. Couldn't find any, but she had cougar and black bear activity. And then she told me that when she got this house, she locked the door finally in the basement. And something that night was outside the house. And it screamed bloody murder for 15 minutes. She was captivated in her bed for 5 full minutes, just shaking of fear because of these skull-splitting screams. She was afraid this thing was going to come through the wall, the window, the door. And finally, she moves to the kitchen with her 2 dogs and just sits and shakes while this thing is just thunder screaming, and just rodents are coming up through the floorboards and are having trouble walking, disoriented movement. Anyway, so I thought, after hearing this, I'm onto something. Over time, I finally got some vocalizations. My first one was a big, long interaction between dogs and coyotes, and all of a sudden there was a it just thundered across the valley. And I'm like, and I recorded it, and I'm like, hot damn, I think maybe I hit. Because it's like, what else does that? And I checked in with a buddy of mine from Montana and Colorado, and they both go, congratulations, you hit. That's what they do here. Well, I didn't see the sound maker. So, but later on, I got all kinds of interesting things. What Victoria is talking about is in 2018, I accidentally set myself on fire. I had a severe burns below my knee, And I ended up driving to a burn center, and I thought, well, come on now, what are we really going to do here? 17 days later, I get out, and I've got like 17% of my leg severely burned below my knee, so I had to have skin graft surgery. So I get back out to the property, and by this time I've got a trading block. And at first there's a big old yellow plastic filter about 2 feet long that kind of pissed the little old lady off, because it's like, where'd this come from? This isn't mine. I don't want this here. So rather than get a fingerprint sample, she picks it up and puts it on my truck, of course, to get rid of it. A couple days later, I get burdock. And the burdock the root is ripped off. And of course, I'm curious. I'm a biologist. I want to know why. What's the medicinal aspect of this plant? And so it turns out that the roots are a carcinogen inhibitor, cancer inhibitor. And so I'm like, glad that I don't need that. Whoever's doing this, rip the root off. And then I'm checking out the plant, and it's for topical use for skin abrasions and burns. How did whoever put that there know that? That's interesting. We had all kinds of interesting things going on, like statues being moved, tables being pushed up against the tree, against the house. We had weather stripping pulled off the door. We've had vocalizations that act like mammals, that sound like birds. We had the wire taken off the leaf ducts of the house, those pipes that pick up the water off the roof. And I forgot the proper term, but anyway, we'd have those stripped off the house and laid under the clothesline up to 5 times in 1 year. This happened like 6 or 7 years. I didn't tell you, I got a game cam shot of a silhouette. The flash didn't go off. When we put the game cams up, the idea was we want cougar and black bear. If you guys want to step in front of it, great, but we certainly don't expect that, and we're not after you. So at ease and just do what you want to do. In the meantime, I did get a silhouette shot. And I do not put that online because we know how people deal with things disrespectfully. I will use it in the future on publications that I put out for public relations with witnesses, etc. And I'm working with people in virtually every state. Have plans to go to Alaska. Just got back from Washington State. Live in Wisconsin this year. I spoke in Tennessee, Arkansas, and have and also Ohio in the future. I believe I will be. But anyway, what you're experiencing sounds very repetitive to what others have talked about, and so I have no doubt what's going on. And I did ask about red fox because I was curious, because sometimes they tend to collect golf balls, and sometimes if they're taking chicken or whatever, they may for fun or for whatever reason. Animals do some interesting things that we haven't even completely charted yet. So there's always interesting series of things going down that it's another discovery. Wow, we didn't know they did that. We're making discoveries all the time. And a lot of times local people know it, but it never makes the books. And then, of course, the animals don't always read the field guides on how they're supposed to behave. So that's interesting. And pardon me for going bam, 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 but I just figured you guys have been talking, so I try to get some stuff in.
It's really funny. I went on a BFRO expedition right after I saw my sighting. I paid like $400 to go walk in the woods with these guys. And I remember saying to the BFRO guy, because I'm into medicinal herbs as well. I have books upon books, and I'm always making a tincture or some kind of salve or a lotion. And I remember saying to the BFRO guy, I wonder if Bigfoot knows what the medicinal uses are of these plants, because if he gets sick or he gets hurt, I mean, come on, you can't tell me that animals don't get hurt. I mean, I've seen deer with scars and bear and different things. I'm like, I wonder if they know how to treat themselves.
First of all, I got to jump in here and smile and say, let's look at human beings and see how we have powerful strengths in certain areas. Technology, manual labor, landscaping, zoology, aquamarine stuff, different aspects of technology, writing, art, all the different things that we do, languages. Some of us have trouble with one language. Some of us manage numerous languages effortlessly. I can spell really well, speak somewhat reasonably, and I have a heck of a time dealing with a lot of just the behavioral aspects of dealing with people. So I tend to shun them and end up working more with animals because I feel like I can read the animals better than people. On one hand, they're less complicated, and on the other, they're not at all because there's so much behind each individual. So getting to individuals, what are the extremes of some of these individuals of this particular target species complex? And I say that because some have been described as gorillas. Some have been described as cavemen and women. Some have been described as hairy people. Some have been described other ways. And they're long, and they're slender, and they're heavy, and they're wide, and they're thick, and they're thin, and they just look like sapiens from the standpoint of variation. You know, if it is to believe, if you believe the witness descriptions that come up from people that I consider extremely serious that do have other secondary evidence to match up with what we're dealing with. So getting back to the medicinal use of plants, we need to think about what do we know about great apes, other primates? Do they know? Yeah. Great apes know where the plant sources are, and they know when they're in bloom. And they'll eat minerals, and they'll actually eat wood, and they'll eat the area of the wood that has insects that actually eat the wood and then defecate, and there's protein in that. And there's just a whole series of food resources that most people wouldn't even consider for vitamins and minerals and things like that. So, and there's been numerous descriptions of people claiming interactions and saying, yeah, these things know what these plants do. I've got a friend, and I can't identify that person, but they get 3 mushrooms up to 3 or 4 times a year put on their table, brought in mysteriously. Other things as well. And I just know that from my general communications that we're dealing with, so we've got a fraction of knowledge of what there is to learn on what we're dealing with. So it's just shocking and amazing, and yet so out there, the majority of people just go, yeah, right, whatever.
They do, yeah.
Can I say something about the herbs and the municipal purposes? A while back, I did a video about the kudzu vine. And if you do the history on the kudzu vine, because when I got my little creature on video, it was in the middle of a kudzu vine. And so I started wondering about the kudzu vine. And, you know, they say it's the vine that ate the South. So one day when I had some downtime at work, I just started looking at the kudzu vine. And come to find out that it's an herb from China. It's an herb.
Oh, wow.
It's good for your heart. It's good for your blood pressure. And, you know, it's good for headaches. I mean, it's good for, the leaves have municipal purposes, and the roots have municipal purposes. And then when you think about it, the kudzu vine is the vine that they say is the vine that ate the South. How many times when you were going to Hamlet, see those big green vines that's going up the road? It is, when you break through those kudzu vines, it is like a hidden city. And it gives them proper shelter. It gives them shade from the heat. It gives them cover from the rain. And not only that, there's a municipal. They can live off of that vine. But what else travels through the kudzu vine? Rabbits, small game, squirrel. Perfect habitat for them.
Yeah.
And so I just did a short little video and put it out there. And I had so many people criticizing me.
Oh, sure.
They look at it as to be, it is now from the Department of Agriculture, it's considered an invasive weed. It's an herb. People used to feed it to their goats. And if you look up the municipal purposes of that, no wonder they have a long life or longevity. What they eat in nature gives them what they need. It's good for toothaches. The principles of it are amazing. But that is, and the reason I come to that, or even thought about coming to that, when I think, when was it you or was it you, Dan? I was telling about the snake skin that was left on the trail.
It was me.
So when I'd come back, when the little clan I had, after the hurricane come through, I actually had a snake skin left in the trail at the same place where I filmed it in the kudzu bun,
Mhm.
which, and I knew the snake skin weren't there. It just, the hurricane had just passed. It was I was watching where I was stepping. I do my stuff in the swamp, and I told you, my husband does it in the mountains. But everywhere I was putting the placement of my step, I wasn't wearing my snake boots. It was ate up with, especially when a hurricane comes through and there's so many trees and the configuration of the land. What I realized was when the water had come and just killed it all back. When we were walking through the fire breaks, they were paralleling us in the kudzu vine. But that was the same time, like I said, I went in to check on them after the hurricane, because we had people die in our county, and it was just flooded. And I was putting my one foot down, then I would look again, put another foot down, look again. I come to the area where we filmed it, which we sat on the video for a year and didn't even know we had it. And it was someone else. We're fixing to delete it, and we just happened to send it to someone and say, well, this is what our area looks like, because we had some crazy stuff happen. And they're like, you've been all over it and didn't get it. But it just kind of blended in. And so when I probably went 10 yards past the point where we got it on video, and I turned around and come back, and it was right there laying on top of the grass. Everything was wet. Everything was damp. It was dry, laying on the grass. And I'm not a snake person. Don't get me wrong. I don't have anything to prove by picking them up and giving them little kisses and stuff like. No, if you want to do that, that's fine. I don't hurt them unless unless they're an immediate threat. I live and let live. Okay, but that was the last time I had any interaction with that clan there. I feel like I missed my opportunity to make that connection there, because it was either a warning or a gift to say, hey, we're okay. Now, if you say that out loud, you're crazy, right?
I'm gonna jump in immediately. Here's from what I know. One, you're probably not going to be forgotten. Two, I would think that you could easily, we don't know that clan is still there in that exact precise location. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I don't know. But if they are, I would not be surprised if that's really what we have there, that they would know, they would remember you. And I don't think you'd have any problem re-picking it up, if you decided you wanted to do that.
The one thing that I always remember is I had a friend that just retired from the North Carolina Highway Patrol. He ribs me and stuff, and we grew up together. He was one of those crazy people that you take selfies on Facebook holding a rattlesnake up, and just letting it go back in the river and stuff. But he told me, he always ribbed me about, my experiences, and, because we all grew up in the same area. But, he called me and he told me, he says, Victoria, he says, I got to tell you. He says, when the hurricane was coming through, this was Matthew, and it was pretty bad. He says, when the hurricane was coming through, he says, my brother had went out on the porch, the back deck of his porch, and he's right there in the middle of the swamp. And he said he heard a scream coming from the swamp that he's never heard in his life. And he was raised there. And that left a feeling in me of just pure desperation of what they had to be going through. And I wondered what had happened for them to sound off, because the ones in our areas have always stayed silent, because that's how they survive, by not being vocal. And to hear that, and for someone to notice the sounds of the swamps, to tell his brother that he heard a scream that he had, unlike any he'd ever heard before, it made my heart sink, because we never had The only negative experience I ever had there was on one morning when it was foggy. I was going to go track in by myself, and I got to the edge of the woods, and something said, "Don't do it." And I turned around, and I left. But I have to wonder. I just have no words for how I felt when I heard that. It was almost. I think I really feel like I blew an opportunity to grow and study them by not picking up that snake skin. But it caught me so off guard because I was watching the ground. Because the sister ain't about to be bit by a snake. No. Negative Ghost Rider. No.
My response is simply, I think you can easily go back to the area and just re-pick up where you were if you want to. That's my thoughts. I think we're dealing with something incredibly intelligent, and they read us, as you had talked about earlier. They read us very well, and they have certain likes and dislikes. They have different levels of comfort. They have different levels of nervousness, and they seem to be available to certain people more than others. And so it's just an interesting opportunity for all of us to learn more when we feel comfortable enough to do it.
Johnny, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? Any, like going back into areas and them getting familiar with you?
Well, most of the time, the areas that we went to more than one time, and we used to go to some of these areas weekly, then the more you go, the more activity it seems like you get. Like they know you're coming. Of course, we usually just, as you know, we cook out, man. We're gonna eat while we're there, and they're comfortable. We just act normal. We're not, and I'm sure Dan and the rest of y'all agree. We're not hunting. We're just acting normal. I mean, we're there. I think that the people who go in hunt mode, they know that mode. They know that stance. They know what they look like when they're hunting, and that's just not the way you do it. We just go in and act normal. We hike. We look at the water. We look at rocks. We look at fancy trees. I mean, we just act normal. I agree with what Dan said. I think that most of the time you can go back to an area, and that doesn't mean you may not get something the first time you go back. You may have to go back a couple of times because sometimes you go and you don't get any activity at all. They may not be there. But Dan, I wanted to ask you a question because I know it's talked about a lot. I know you've interviewed a lot of people from all over about some of these things migrating and that kind of thing. I know Gwen said something about it the other night. So, and you've interviewed people and been all over. What's your opinion on that?
If you're talking to me, pardon me, I've got a little bit of a hearing connection. I don't have a lot of volume here. So basically, our questions are winter survival. Who's leaving? Who's staying? I'm guessing that a lot of them stay. And there isn't a lot of migration. But when you get into the mountains and you get into resources, a lot of the local researchers are telling me that they're coming down the mountain or they're going up the mountain, depending upon the season, and they're following the big game. I don't know that they all do that. I know some people are vegetarians and some people are carnivores, and many of us are omnivores, okay? In other words, our focus on our favorite diets. And environmentally, there would be different types of sustenance available for them. And of course, weather. And now we're warmed up. We were 50 today in Wisconsin. Last year at this time, we were 22. Quite often we're at 0, but yet we get tracks in snow. We've had tracks at minus 37-degree nights.
Wow.
Where the tracks come out of the woods through the snow, go through somebody's yard, and turn around and go back. Size of the tracks, anywhere between 10 and 17 inches, typically. Rarely outside of those, sometimes 8. We got 8-inch tracks in one of my counties here, near where I live. I've seen snow tracks of 8-inch, 14-inch, and 17-inch. And by the way, my phone is down to about, I guess, 15%. So I don't know how long I'll be with you, but I should be a while yet.
Mine's at 12, so
There we go. There we go. Something amazing to me now is the state of Illinois, which has got a lot of streams. But what's the big resource in Illinois? Cornfields. What's up with the cornfield? Well, that's instant. That's instant calories. But what else? Look at all the protein visits. Look at all the protein that visits the cornfields. White-tailed deer, hogs, livestock. Also raccoons, which is the universal protein species from Florida all over eastern half of the United States. So there's food all over for everybody, whether it's feral cats or fish or roadkill or whatever. We're guessing that they're probably focusing on where I live. It's hillsides. We got river bluffs. It's called the driftless area. So we're looking at south and western hillsides as possible cover. And one of my relation had a observation of a large man come out of the woods on one of these river bluffs in March when there was snow. So getting back to migration, I'm sure there's plenty because of the United States and because of the environmental situations. But my guess is it's not as evident as many would think. I think they hunkered down in cold weather.
Dan, I was wondering if maybe Michael and Gwen, maybe if you guys don't mind, I would like to exchange information. Make sure you guys.
Sure. Absolutely.
So, Michael, is there anything you want to share or anything you want to ask Dan or anything you want to put out there? I know we're going on an hour and you guys have been so, thank you so much for the time you gave.
I find it. Oh, no, I'm just fascinated by everything and hearing all the stories. I mean, I don't get out as much as Gwen because I got to babysit the bloodhounds and all that good stuff. But
his job is also not as flexible as mine, so he has to work where I can take off and go and do the things that I can do. But
but no.
Well, I find each one of you incredible, and Gwen, like you, I'm lucky to have a husband that I can hit the trails with, and he has to, snatch nut in me and, and tell me, hey, that's not so safe sometimes, but, and I have to listen to him. But, I know he's doing it for my own good.
I chuckle because we'll be outside in the yard and you hear something being thrown, like it's clear in the leaves. And then when it leaves the wood line, you hear it and it goes plop and it's like 5 feet away. And I don't even pay attention. Like I hear it. I know it's there, but I just keep going about my business, And he'll go, did you hear that? And I go, yep, I heard it. And he goes, I'm going in the house. Like,
one of the stories I had.
No, I'm going to finish doing what I'm doing. Because if he wanted to hit me with the rock, he'd hit me with the rock. Like, it's not an intentional. I think he's just saying, hey, I'm here. I'm just letting you know. And
I'm not getting any closer.
I'm going in the house.
But one thing I have to say with my experience here at the house, and that's where I get most of the experience. Like I said, I'm only out maybe a time or two with her, but and I haven't experienced anything. But here at the house, like the one time I forget where she was, if she was working or if she went somewhere. And again, I don't know. I'm a creature. I like to be outside because what the hell? You don't have to worry about hitting anything. And it was like 1:30 in the afternoon. And this was just this past, like toward the end of the summer, August, maybe September, not even September. And I was at the end of the patio. The pool is here, and then a stack of wood and the tree line before you hit that cornfield. And I'm peeing, and I don't know what grabbed out of the corner of my eye, like the peripheral vision, something. And it's the strangest thing. I can't explain what it was. All it looked like was something not that high, salt and pepper. And when I say this, there was dry leaves on the ground, and it looked like it made one step, like it went like this and disappeared. Because and I'm like, what the hell did I just see? I mean, I saw something. It looked like something in the woods. It was like over the small pile of wood we had, and I let the bloodhounds out. They went tearing off down by the chickens into the woods, and you could hear those things stomping through the leaves. And I'm like, okay, that thing didn't make a sound.
It makes you just enough to make you question your sanity.
Yeah, like what was that? Yeah, yeah. And then we had pool issues all summer long. We couldn't get we had problems with the pipes, and when I had the boulders put on, I think he cracked both of them. So I'm trying to do this, and and like she said, it was like going on just right before dusk, going on 9 or a little after, and I'm out there pissing with the pool filter and stuff like that, and I could clearly hear something coming through the trees and hit, and I'm like, okay, and I shine and I don't see anything, and then I heard something else, and then I called her. I'm like, I'm going in. I said, I'm out here by and then it was a couple days later, she was off. It was about the same time of night. We were doing something with the pool filter, and something came, and I'm like, that's what I heard the other night. It was like something just coming through and then landed on top of the metal roof of the chicken.
Wow.
Yeah.
So just to tie things down, because some of us have to go to work tomorrow and holidays. So I just want to go down the list. Let's start with Dan, because Dan's phone's running out. Then we'll go Dan, Johnny, Michael, Gwen. Really quick, best, most amazing experience.
Really
Dan.
tough. It's for me. It was hanging out with Shane Carpenter and Randy Harrington, my team members from Ozark Mountain Sasquatch. We in 2019, I got a chance to see one at 100 feet through thermal, just peeking around a tree, and Shane walked up on him. And the exchange that we had after he had a chance to get close to this and shine a light in its face, he was 7 to 8 feet away. And it was an individual that had left many, many, many tracks. We have many casts of over 10 inches long. And he was approximately 5 feet in height, black hair in color, oil type short hair. I can eventually share an image that was drawn by Sibylla Irwin that looks very similar to what his look was. And they came into camp that night afterwards. And Shane had a rock thrown at him. The individual did not hit him, and there was tooth chattering. Again, he was 7 to 8 feet away from this. He was so astounded and shocked and amazed and happy that he didn't even think to take his cell phone and snap a shot of this individual, which he easily could have done. We've got other shots of them, but they're not particularly good because of resolution, distance, and the equipment and the darkness. And being a wildlife photographer, hey, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't have enough time to get a picture of that cougar, bobcat, lynx running across the road, or fisher, or pine marten, let alone something that's as fast or faster that nobody would believe anyway. Because if you do get a good shot, it's just a guy in a suit. So there you go. That's one of my best ones. They did come into camp that night, and they went through the second night, they went through all the material. They ended up zipping the medic bag open and shut 17 times, and then you heard the cooler shut on the recorder. We checked the cooler. They appropriately took 6 monster cappuccinos.
That's hard. That's hardcore right there. All right, Johnny.
Probably the best experience I've had was the night I got my photo. Me and Lazy Tail here,
Cowboy.
my buddy. We were in Uwharrie, and I've been out with a lot of different researchers over the time, and they'd always talked about seeing lights and having explosions of light. I'd never had that happen, and I didn't think they were crazy. I just never had it happen. And the night that I got the photo, I did have an explosion of light. It was about 2 foot off the ground, 30, 40 feet from me, and it lit the entire canopy of the trees up. And this was in February. It was cold. I had insulated coveralls on. I was sitting in a lounge chair in the dark down below a campsite. So from the point that the light exploded to the point of me getting ready to say, you know what, because Cowboy was ready to go. He was raising a fit, and I made him stay. But I could hear him moving, but I couldn't see him. I could not get him in the viewfinder, so I just started snapping pictures. And the picture that I have is the one that the only one I got of all that. But but it was with a Bushnell night vision camera. That's probably the wildest time. About they run me out. They got so close to me, and they were getting around the only one path I had to get out of there. So Cowboy said, "Let's go," and I said, "Okay." So we left. But that, you get a lot of experiences here and there. But that was probably they were there. They were close. They were doing rock claps. You could hear the rocks being clapped together. They were tossing rocks. I had a video recorder going, and you could hear the rocks come through the trees and hit at the recorder. And I was by myself, so I don't do as much of that as I used to. I don't know where I just got older and wiser, but I try to go with people more and not go as deep as I used to. I guess it's just wisdom, when you see so much, and like we got screamed at the other night, it just kind of messes with you a little bit. And I've been around the block now. I've been a policeman for a long time. I've kicked in doors. I've done it all, but it's a different world when you get that feeling and you're in there and you just know, like Victoria says, that. And so, I think that would be one of my best stories.
Michael.
Well, I don't have that good of one. And seeing the stuff at the house, and then I remember the one night, I forget, it was like 12:30 or 1:30. I was letting the dogs out, and I heard a howl, and I woke her up. I'm like, I know she was going to work the next day. I'm like, you got to come out here. And in the distance, you could hear her. She's like, that's exactly what the morning she was going to work. That's what she captured, like a howl. And I was like, yeah, it was like nothing that I have. So, I'm still waiting to see one, or
You just have to let Gwen drive.
Yep, it's my turn now. But I'm out there. I'm like, thinking, where are you? It's like if they're there,
Hey, Michael, I've not seen one either like that. The night I got the photo, I didn't see it. I just started snapping photos. So I'm with you. And I put enough time in, I'm ready to see it.
I want to start putting more time in. That's definitely, maybe he can leave me. If he wants to gift me anything, how about the winning lottery numbers? I can spend more time and not have to worry about my bills being paid.
Rob Bell. Hey, y'all. Happy holidays. What's the conversation about? Well, we're talking Bigfoot tonight. We're fixing to close it up. Do you have a question, Rob Bell? Gwen.
Oh gosh, I've had quite a few experiences. Probably, I'd say the most recent one I had was when I went to Salt Fork in September. I've been wanting to go to Salt Fork for quite a while. Finally got there. Friday night, I was there. I slept in my Bronco because it was just me. So I took an air mattress and slept in the back of my Bronco. And Saturday morning, we went to check a spot to investigate. And it was on a dirt road. And when we got back to the campsite, I noticed that dust had collected on fingerprints on the back of my car. Now, everywhere I touched on the car, there were no fingerprints anywhere. It was just this one set on the back of my tailgate. Wow. And I was like, oh my gosh. So Saturday night, I'm sleeping in the back of my Bronco, and I woke up at like 4 something in the morning, and I looked out the back window of my Bronco, and something was standing there, but it was like just the midsection. It was not like you couldn't see shoulders or a head. And I'm like, there was nothing there. Like if I were to back up, I would have ran it over. So I knew it wasn't there for me to pull in. So I kind of freaked out a little bit. I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm looking out the side windows, everybody's asleep, the campfire is dead. And I thought, I'm just going to lay here and I'm just going to be really quiet. And I want to see if I hear it walking around. Well, when I looked back up a few minutes later, it was gone. So I'm driving home. I have said nothing to no one. I packed up real quick and I left, and I'm talking to Mike on the way home. And he's like, you got to tell Bill. Bill is who organized it. So I called Bill, and he tells me that the lady who was across from me, she was sleeping in a tent. She got up at the same time and saw something standing there. And she scoped it with a FLIR camera, and there was something there. And it was, and I'm like, oh my gosh, because my truck's like 5.5 foot from the ground to the top of the to the truck. So for me to not see shoulders or a head, that thing had to have been 7+ feet high. I'm assuming. I'm just seeing the midsection, but there was just enough moonlight to be able to see, a little bit. And there was something standing there. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, do I move? Because if I move too much, am I going to scare it? Like, is it going to tear out my window and rip me out of the back of my Bronco? Like, what's going to happen, Because I'm not in my backyard. I'm somewhere else. So I don't know, like, what the demeanor of this thing is going to be, But it was a pretty wild experience, and I'll never forget it. I came home. I got out the tape, and I, got the prints off the back of my car. Because it was just awesome. It was just awesome.
Wow, that's an incredible experience. When Johnny and Lynn got yelled at, they called me on the phone, and I said, if you stay, they'll respect you, right? But so anyway, did you want to give a shout out to your friend in Tennessee?
Oh, Miss Carrie, I wish you could have joined us tonight. I miss you since you moved away. They started hiking the AT in Georgia. They ended up in Tennessee. She got hurt on the trail and came off, and they just kind of set up camp in Tennessee. So, hopefully she gets up here one of these days. And because the couple of Bigfoot we have here on the property really like when her and I are together. We get a lot of activity when her and I are camping in the yard, because we set up tents and we camp right there in the yard. And I think they miss her. So I miss her too. So she should come back.
So Dan, Rob says there's been many names for Bigfoot. You are pretty familiar with some of the names out there, Dan.
Yeah. It's a case, right? I'm pretty sleepy right now. You're hitting me.
Okay,
You're hitting me at a scary time. So I do a much better job with multiple choice on them right now. But everything from Omaha to some of the common names like Stickmen and Tricksters and it's just when you go over the maps of different hollows, Devil Hollow, or we've got Devil's Lake in Wisconsin. We've even got what appears to be like a Chimpanzee Creek. It's not quite spelled that way, but that's what it looks like when they named it way early on. So there's all kinds of references to them. And of course, with the Native Americans, virtually every locality of people early on had references to them. So what's up with that? And then, of course, the early carvings of ape-like features and etc. So, this is an incredible mystery with many, many folds of information that's available in there if we take the time to search it out, which many people work off emotion and don't have the patience to look. But it's there. And, all the scientific evidence will eventually catch up as we become familiar with it. Hypnotism wasn't universally accepted initially. It's much more so now. What else is out there that we're going to learn about?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's true. I would like to thank each of you for coming on tonight. You took time out of your Christmas day. And the reason we did this are for the people out there that, are spending Christmas alone or couldn't get home for Christmas. Michael, it was the first time I really got to speak to you. It was such a pleasure, and I really enjoyed your story. And when you got some things coming up, and I wish you well. You deserve everything that's coming your way. Johnny, fabulous husband there. You we're actually going out next weekend.
Awesome.
We're going to go track some areas where we've had some activity. And Dan, you've been my friend for 5 years. When I had my, first experience, you were always there and just a phone call away. And I'm very grateful for you. And in closing, I would like to give a shout out to my friend Tina that used to go out in the woods with me. This is first Christmas she spent without her mother, and she's had a really hard Christmas. And if she's listening, Tina, I love you. And I hope it gets easier. And I'd just like to say Merry Christmas to each of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
You. Merry Christmas, and quite an honor to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, nice
Thank
meeting
you.
you, Dan.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.